Today, I'm bringing you a highly rated Spanish movie, The Invisible Kiss. It's sad that you won't be able to guess the truth until the very last second of this film. Spoilers ahead, watch out. In the evening, Virginia Goodman, a top lawyer, walks into a hotel under police surveillance. She approaches a room and rings the doorbell. A sleepy man named Adrian opens the door. Adrian had recently hired his private lawyer to invite Virginia to defend him. After inviting Virginia inside, Adrian goes to the bedroom to change clothes. Meanwhile, the TV in the living room airs breaking news. Photographer Laura was found dead in a hotel, and the suspect is the famous entrepreneur, Adrian. However, Adrian insists on his innocence and is currently staying in the hotel under his lawyer's bail. Virginia arrived 3 hours earlier than expected, bringing urgent news. The court might make a decision tonight as the prosecution has found a witness against Adrian. She wants Adrian to recount the case details one more time. With her undefeated 30-year career, Virginia can overturn witness testimony based on details. Time is tight, so she urges Adrian to recall the events of the crime. Adrian and the well-known photographer, Laura, have maintained a secret affair for many years. Not long ago, Adrian received an anonymous message threatening to expose their relationship unless he paid 100,000 euros. Having no choice, Adrian agreed and went to a remote hotel with Laura as instructed by the blackmailer. However, after waiting for hours without seeing anyone, they lost patience and prepared to leave. While Adrian was packing, he was suddenly attacked from behind and passed out. When he woke up, he was horrified to find Laura mysteriously dead in the room. Before he could react, the police burst in. Adrian raised his hands, insisting he didn't do it, but the police found no one else in the room. The room was locked from the inside, and the windows were always locked, making it impossible for anyone to escape from such a sealed room. With all the evidence pointing to him, Adrian became the prime suspect and was arrested, though he was soon bailed out by his lawyers. Virginia learned the whole story from Adrian, who kept claiming he was framed. Virginia wondered why the killer would frame Adrian if their goal was just extortion. Why kill Laura and then frame Adrian? And why not take the money? The motive wasn't financial. Virginia, experienced and sharp, could see Adrian was hiding something. She advised him that if he concealed anything, no one could help him. Then, Virginia pulled out a newspaper article about a missing boy. Seeing the news about the missing boy made Adrian extremely uneasy. Under Virginia's pressure, Adrian revealed a hidden secret. 3 months ago, he and Laura were secretly meeting in a hotel. On their way back, a deer suddenly crossed the road, causing Adrian to crash into an oncoming car. They were terrified to find the driver, a young man, dead. Adrian was about to call the police when Laura stopped him, fearing that their affair would be exposed. Since there was no one around, Laura convinced Adrian to leave the scene. After a brief hesitation, Adrian agreed, but their car wouldn't start, and they heard another car approaching. In a panic, Laura staged the scene to make it look like an accident involving her and Adrian. When a man named Tom stopped to help, Laura pretended to answer a phone call from the dead man's car to avoid suspicion. She also hid the blood dripping from the car with her body. After Tom's left, she took the young man's phone and kept it, planning to dispose of the evidence. Adrian put the young man's body in the trunk and drove to a lake to dispose of it. He was terrified, but eventually pushed the car into the lake, feeling immense guilt as it sank. Meanwhile, Laura, waiting for rescue, encounters a kind-hearted man named Thomas passing by. She tells him that her car hit a deer and now won't start. Thomas, who used to work as an engineer for BMW, is very familiar with this model. After checking, Thomas finds that it's a sensor problem. If Laura doesn't mind, he can tow the car to his house and fix it. It would take him at most hours. Actually, Laura had already called for roadside assistance earlier, but due to a shortage of staff, it was unclear how long it would take for help to arrive, so she agreed to Thomas's offer. Little did Laura know, this would be the beginning of her nightmare. In less than 20 minutes, they arrived at Thomas's house. Thomas introduced her to his wife, Silveria, who warmly invited Laura inside. While Laura and Silveria were chatting in the living room, Laura accidentally noticed a photo on the table that made her shudder with fear. The boy they had run over earlier was actually Thomas and Silveria's son. Realizing the truth, Laura was filled with panic and unease. desperately wanting to leave. Just then, Thomas finished fixing the car. They invited her to stay for dinner, but feeling guilty, Laura hastily declined. As she gathered her things, her phone rang. It was the boy's phone she had forgotten to deal with. Panicking, Laura hid the phone under the couch. The loud ringtone caught Thomas and Silveria's attention. Following the sound, Thomas found his son's phone under the couch. Silveria found this very strange, as she distinctly remembered her son taking his phone when he left. Sensing imminent danger, Laura used the excuse of it being late to leave hurriedly. Thomas noted her car's license plate number as she left. Little did he know, the woman he had just sent off was responsible for his son's death. Later, Laura told Adrian about what happened, and under Laura's suggestion, Adrian had his car sent to a scrapyard for dismantling and forged a business trip record to Paris. Then he reported to the police that his car had been stolen. After doing all this, Adrian and Laura agreed never to contact each other again. However, their seemingly perfect plan did not last long. The boy's disappearance quickly aroused police suspicion. The initial police assessment was that the boy had fallen off a cliff in a car accident. Watching Thomas's agony on TV filled Adrian with guilt. However, Thomas had already suspected Laura. On the day his son went missing, Laura had behaved very strangely at his house, as if she were hiding something. Thomas told the police about this, along with an important detail. He had been on the phone with his son just before his son disappeared, and since the woman with the broken-down car had visited, his son's phone mysteriously appeared under the couch. Based on Thomas's clues, the police soon traced it back to Adrian, as the car Laura drove was registered in his name. But Adrian was prepared. His forged trip to Paris and the evidence of his car being stolen served him well, and he successfully cleared himself of suspicion. Later, Adrian riskily met with Laura again. By then, Laura had changed completely. No longer the woman Adrian once knew. Adrian told her that the police suspected him. However, Laura remained unusually calm. It turned out that she had secretly taken the boy's wallet on the day of the incident. Discovering that the boy worked at a bank, she used her husband's position to log into the bank's internal system and transferred a large sum of illegal funds into the boy's account, misleading the police into thinking he had embezzled funds and fled. As expected, this tactic worked perfectly. The news soon reported the boy's disappearance as an embezzlement case, and both Adrian and Laura were cleared of suspicion. Their lives returned to normal. Adrian's company successfully entered the Asian market with its advanced technology, and he was even named Entrepreneur of the Year. Everything seemed to be going well until the award ceremony, where Thomas, disguised as a reporter, confronted Adrian. He suspected that his son had been murdered because he knew his son would never do anything illegal or disappear without contacting him. Thomas was convinced that his son's disappearance was linked to the woman with the broken-down car, and that the driver at that time was likely Adrian, since Laura had adjusted the driver's seat when she got into the car, suggesting that she wasn't the one driving before. Despite the truth, Adrian remained calm, knowing Thomas had no direct evidence. At that moment, Thomas's disguise was exposed, and he was escorted out by the event staff. Through Adrian's story, Virginia pieced together the events. Adrian was convinced that the real killer of Laura was the passing driver, who had left an anonymous note with a photo resembling the river, where he dumped the body in a USB stick, demanding $1 million. Adrian believed the driver had discovered something and, after pretending to leave, followed him and took photos of the crime, intending to blackmail him. Adrian remembered hearing something strange behind him as he pushed the car into the lake. However, Virginia had a different perspective. If the driver was only after money, why didn't he take any? And how did he escape from a closed room? Adrian's story was full of holes and would not hold up in court. Virginia speculated that only Thomas had a clear motive for murder. He knew his son had been killed by Adrian and Laura, and his motive was revenge, not money. Adrian was baffled by how Thomas could have perfectly framed him without leaving a trace. Virginia soon revealed the answer. She pulled out a newspaper from the day Adrian was arrested. No one had noticed that Silveria was in the photo. She was an employee at the hotel where the incident occurred, indicating that Thomas had meticulously planned everything. Thomas had entered the hotel room early, committed the crime, and framed Adrian. Silveria then locked the windows after the police arrived, making it seem plausible. Hearing this, Adrian was in awe of Virginia's deduction skills. From this moment, he completely trusted her. Adrian and his legal team had long suspected the boy's father, and Virginia's deduction confirmed their suspicions. But then, Virginia suddenly discarded the Thomas theory. It turned out Silveria wasn't working that day, and the photo was actually a Photoshop trick by Virginia to test Adrian's honesty. Clearly, Adrian was still hiding something. Virginia received a call from a source confirming that the police had found a witness, the passing driver from the day of the incident. This news terrified Adrian. He had lied to the police about being in Paris, but the driver had seen him that day. If the driver testified, Adrian would be finished. Virginia then proposed a hypothesis. What if Adrian wasn't with his lover on the day of the accident? What if Laura had hit the boy on her own and then faked the embezzlement to cover it up, only to ask Adrian for help when her plan was discovered? Adrian only learned about the boy's death at the hotel. They needed to convince the court that Adrian was also a victim. They could find the dumping site and place Laura's personal items in the trunk, framing her instead. Virginia took out a map and asked Adrian to mark the spot where he dumped the body. They would plant Laura's items there, but Adrian objected, citing the witness. Virginia then revealed there was no witness. It was a ruse to get Adrian to confess. Finally relieved, Adrian marked the spot on the map and handed it to Virginia. He then confessed something else. The boy wasn't dead when he dumped him in the lake. But it was too late to turn back now. The boy had drowned. Hearing this, Virginia lost her composure, visibly angry at Adrian's actions. After a moment, she regained her calm, suppressing her fury. She couldn't let the final case before her retirement tarnish her undefeated streak. So she pressed Adrian, asking if there was anything else he was hiding. Adrian insisted there wasn't, but Virginia felt he was still lying. According to their strategy, they could make it work, but what if they swapped Adrian and Laura's roles? Virginia proposed, what if it was Adrian who took the boy's wallet and used his connections to fabricate the embezzlement records? It was Adrian who stopped Laura from calling the police and orchestrated the entire plan. Laura was just dragged into this mess against her will. Virginia pulled out a medical report showing that Laura developed acute anxiety soon after the incident. Her conscience was tortured until she decided to redeem herself by telling the boy's parents the whole truth. She arranged a meeting with them at the hotel where Elvira worked. Laura called Adrian, making him believe the driver had discovered their secret. The 100,000 euros for the blackmail was actually Laura's way of compensating the boy's parents. Laura arrived at the hotel early and sent a scheduled message to Adrian. If he didn't show up, the message would threaten him into coming. Adrian arrived soon after, but when Laura suggested using the money to appease the parents, Adrian flatly refused. It wasn't the money he was worried about, it was his career. Then, Adrian received Laura's message and realized there was no witness. Laura had booked the hotel under his name and threatened him to go to the police with her. Adrian agreed on the surface but had murderous thoughts, just as Virginia said this. Adrian interrupted, asking why the couple didn't go to the police with the truth. Virginia took him to the window and pointed to the building across the street, where Thomas was visible. Thomas had stopped trusting the police long ago. He was always watching Adrian, waiting for a chance to bring him to justice. Adrian still denied killing anyone, believing that Virginia's previous explanation could also be true. The newspaper photo supported his version, but Virginia revealed that the photo was doctored. Elvira had the day off and couldn't have helped Thomas escape. Adrian closely examined the photo, noticing the lack of Elvira's reflection in the mirror. He laughed and finally confessed to Virginia that he did kill Laura. Just then, Adrian's private lawyer called with urgent news. Virginia suggested he take the call and said they'd continue in 10 minutes.
Señora Goodman. Gracias.
After Virginia left, Adrian dialed his lawyer. A few moments into the call, Adrian heard a static noise, and ink started announcing from the pen in his pocket. Realizing it was a listening device, he glanced at Virginia's notes, which read, "Murderer, liar, scum" in angry scribbles. Adrian began to understand. He replayed their conversation in his mind as he slowly walked to the window. the film ends here. This movie, directed by Spanish thriller master Oriol Paulo, uses a layered narrative technique, allowing the audience to peel back the layers and gradually uncover the truth.